Welcome to a new episode of the Guru Perspective. And today I want to talk about a few things that happened in college football, like some of the NCAA upsets. And I want to get into the games that happened in the NFL in week 12 and do my predictions on both week 13 and week 14 in the NFL, and then week 14 in the NCAA football. Not really much that I feel like they had to play for as far as when it comes to this week in college. But then and again, I said the same thing last week, and it was a lot of upsets that made it shook the grounds of the college football. A lot of teams are going to be eliminated from the playoffs. I want to see what happened in this championship week because this can definitely make or break a team and sneak a few teams back into the playoffs. So yeah, it's going to still be very interesting. Last week, I thought that basically everything was just going to be put in stone, but you can never say that now. And I'm starting to feel like in college football, it's any given Saturday. And I actually enjoyed what I seen recently on college and what was on display. Even though one of my favorite teams at heart and my family team, Alabama, was upset. I want to start off with some of those games, and I want to start off with number nine Ole Miss versus Florida. I was surprised in that game because it seemed like Ole Miss just basically went in there and felt like they can just go in and go through the motions and pull the game off. But Florida had a different thing in mind. They played lights out and they played like I thought they was going to play most of this year. Was really surprised to see how good they played. And then they got a few stops to seal the deal of the game on Ole Miss. So number nine, Ole Miss, definitely one of those teams who I believe that will be eliminated. They will need a lot of help to get in. And I don't think that's going to be possible, not this year. The other game I was surprised about is BYU dropping two games in a row after going undefeated for so long, and BYU lost to Arizona State. And they were ranked number 14. Arizona State was 21. And I thought, okay, well, this would be a good game. And I still feel like after what happened to BYU the week prior to when they lost, that they will come back with a vengeance and they will prove why they should be undefeated or still in the college rankings. They didn't do either. BYU dropped two games in a row. And that game, they lost 28-23 against Arizona State. I felt like Arizona State had more to prove. They were more or less, I felt like a team who was trying to make a bowl game anyway, but still, they still came out victorious, beat a BYU team who has a really big O line and actually a really good team over there. I didn't really have as much faith as a lot of other people felt like with them. I thought that they were an okay team. I didn't think they were great. And still, they proved me wrong on a lot of cases. They did a really good job of executing and doing the things they needed to do. And I give props to BYU. But I think now, with the competition and some of the other teams who maybe had three losses, they're going to be eliminated due to the fact that they didn't really face a lot of big teams. And now I think that they're going to be on the outside looking in as well. Number seven, Alabama against Oklahoma, a non-ranked Oklahoma team who was 5-5 this year. That was a huge disappointment for me, and I know I feel bad for my family, especially telling my aunt, who is a huge Alabama football fan, and my family down south in general. I told her on B right now they're not looking too good. I don't know what's going on with Alabama and what's happening. But if they lose this game, it's a possibility they're gone and they won't be coming back. My co-host to the Guru Sports Session, Ebuck, feel like they still have a chance even though losing three games. But after that embarrassing loss, getting beat 24-3, I don't think there's no coming back from that. So I think they're definitely gone after that. It'll have to be a lot of work done. A lot of teams lose this week to actually make that still a reality. But I don't know if Alabama will be coming in this year. I feel like I like Caleb DeBoer and what he did in his groundwork in Washington, but it is different when you got to replace a person like Nick Saban. And, it's a lot of pressure to go to Alabama and win right now. I'm not surprised that he didn't live up to the expectations this year. I still feel like, and this is my opinion, I know that I've been critical of Jalen Milroe, but I still don't really think he's that guy. He might be a poor man Anthony Richardson going into the NFL. he could be worked on, and they can work on him and help him with his footwork and his accuracy. Because the weird thing about him too is he could throw the deep ball well, just like Anthony Richardson. But when it comes to getting the guy on the slant or a 5 yard route, he miss every time. You got to work on getting the fundamentals straight. The 5 yard routes and the slants, and you look good on the deep ball, like I said, but can you throw an accurate throw to a person right there in your face and who's on a run? That's been my biggest issue with him. And I think until he works on that, he's going to be one of these typical, you got a strong arm and you can run type of quarterbacks out here, but you can't get the job done on the next level. I've always been critical of him, and I stand by that. And definitely losing the way they did too, 24-3, it was a huge embarrassment. I think the last time Alabama didn't score or score like 3 points or less was in like 2011. So that lets you know the pride and what they hold themselves to. And I just felt like Caleb DeBoer and the organization in general dropped the ball. The 24-3 was definitely embarrassing. And that's the reason why I don't think Alabama's going to go in, especially against a team who just came in the SEC and who was 5-5 and had that 5-5 record going into it. I just don't think that they're good on the road, and they don't really execute well. And I don't think that it'll be good to see them going into the playoffs anyway. I definitely feel like they'll be embarrassed. Shame on you, Alabama. And until Caleb DeBoer can do better, I definitely feel like they're going to have a long time before they get back to the higher ranks and respected teams in NCAA football. Texas A&M and Auburn was a crazy game because Auburn fought them tooth and nail. Auburn was up, and then Texas A&M caught back up. But then this game was crazy. I've never seen a game go into four overtimes, but at the same time, Texas A&M lost that game as well, and it was really crazy, 43-41. Auburn or just SEC in general hits different, so I can't really too much beat up on Alabama. Even though Oklahoma, this is their first year in the SEC, but still, I was disappointed in the way that outcome came. But then, they are a SEC team now, and it hits different in the SEC of how great and how talented the players are in the recruiting. And, the NIL, we know the transfer portal, we know how well they do things and execute it. Now, Oklahoma, when they went to the SEC, them in Texas, is going to really make big for when the recruiting comes around and the transfer portals and the NIL deals, because they got that money, endless money that'll help teams or help players decide to go to their actual teams. And I just feel like it's good for college right now. But Texas A&M, I really thought that they would be the unranked Auburn team, but then sometimes those are trap games too. And I wasn't surprised that Auburn won. I was just surprised how they won. I felt like Texas A&M shouldn't look over that game against Auburn, but at the same time, to lose that game surprised me as well. I was shocked on many different occasions, but in college now, I'm gonna have to start definitely saying any given Saturday, because that was a really good game and it was good to watch when it comes to not really having a lot of defense. A 43-41 victory. But I'm gonna have to give credit where credit is due with Auburn, and next week they're gonna have that Iron Bowl, so that's really gonna be interesting. And I'm already hearing Chapman and yapping off and running at the mouth from Auburn players, talking about Ryan Williams, the rookie Alabama wide receiver. So that's gonna really be interesting. Number 16, Colorado versus Kansas. Kansas knocked off three top ranked teams this year. I was really surprised because I definitely felt like, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, on the last Guru Sports session, we thought that they were going to steamroll Kansas, and it was the opposite. Kansas steamrolled Colorado. Coach Prime wasn't too happy about that. He felt like, man, we had our destiny in our hands and we just blew it. They had a chance to definitely creep into like the playoff, the 12-team playoff at that, and they just didn't handle business. And now they're on the outside looking in, and there's a lot of teams who lost three games. I would be surprised if one make it, possibly one pop if the circumstances like of this championship week, if some teams just fall off the cliff, then possibly some of these three lost teams might go in there, but I highly doubt it. So just was really surprised. But then and again, like I said, any given Saturday, I'm starting to trust that. It's more college upsets most times than it is the NFL. So it was just really good parity in college sports. And that let you know too with the transfer portal and the NIL deals that things are going to be on more of an even playing field now. And congratulations to all the teams who got these upsets. There's a few upsets in the NFL that actually surprised me too. The Steelers losing to the Cleveland Browns. That was a really cool game because I wasn't expecting a snow game this early, but it snowed the whole time in Cleveland, and it was really good. I was getting nervous because we right here in Detroit, and we we're very close to them, but we didn't really get too much snow. Not as bad as Cleveland. We got little flurries, but it was a fun game to watch. I mean, who doesn't like snow games? I wouldn't like to play in it, but to see it, it was pretty cool and that early too. Cleveland started off really good, scored on both possessions, and the Steelers was like behind. They got punched in the mouth and was going to recover or trying to recover. And I said they definitely will. And what I liked in that game was, regardless of the fact Russell Wilson still came in and fought, and they actually took the lead at one point. Cleveland stayed in there, and it was a lot of mistakes in that game, and Cleveland still came up victorious in that game. I think George Pickens wasn't too happy after the game and said the inclement weather was the reason that they lost that game, and he still don't feel like the Cleveland Browns is a good team. But regardless of what you're saying, you got to play to win the game, and they played and they ended up winning the game through all the adversity and the things they went through. And I will definitely be telling you more about some of the flaws that they had, when I run my stats coming up soon. The Cowboys and Commanders was a crazy game because it was tied. It was a very low game, a low scoring game. And in the fourth quarter, things just picked up. That run from Turbin was one of the most incredible plays I've seen this year. For him to stop and do a 360 and run all the way and score the touchdown. They were beating Commanders pretty bad, but then it was bad defense on Dallas too, where it was a play with Terry McLaurin, got the ball and ran it back for a touchdown, and it could have tied the game. But of course, the field goal kicker missed, and that caused for a 26-27 point game. And then they were trying to do an onside kick. That was recovered and then ran a touchdown. So it was pretty crazy to see that game. I didn't think that Washington to play that bad. People are still saying they think Jaden Daniels is still injured and he's not really playing up to his caliber, but still, that was a game that if you told me that Dallas was going to win, I would have laughed at you and said you're dreaming. But to have Dallas go out there and play the defense like they played, even though the game just really got out of hand defensively, but they still held Washington and they basically did what they needed to do at the right time to close out that game. I felt embarrassed for Washington too. At the end of the game, I looked at it and said, that gives Dallas hope. They're 4-7 and still probably fighting for a playoff position. And do I think that they'll make it? Hey, you never know. But at the same time, Dallas is fighting and they're not going to go out without a fight. So congratulations. That was a huge win for them. And Coach Mike McCarthy. Titans versus the Texans was a weird game because I still feel like a lot of us didn't give credit where credit is due and talk about how good the Titans played that game, even though I still feel like Will Levis make mistakes and shoot himself in the foot with pick sixes and like intersections and the things that he do during the game. But I have to look at it and say, man, what is going on right now with my boy CJ Stroud? Didn't I have to think about it? That O line is terrible. That's not one of the good O lines in the league. So he's getting exposed. Before he was passing the ball and getting it out of his hands real quick. And last year it made him look good. Now he's holding on the ball a little too long and he's not really getting a chance to get the players and hit them in stride like he would like to. Sometimes I feel like when the players are open, he tried to throw the ball to him a little too late too, and that caused him to get a lot of interceptions. But I was really surprised in that gameplay and seeing that the Titans came away with that game. But like I say, any given Sunday, you play to win the game, like Herm Edwards said. Jaden Daniels need 162 passing yards and 18 rushing yards to reach 2,500 passing yards and 500 rushing yards this season. If he does that, which I was thinking he was going to do Sunday, which he didn't in that game, he would have joined RG3 and Cam Newton as the fastest players to reach those marks to begin his NFL career. I want to get off into some of those games now since I've already been bringing up the NFL. I already talked about the Steelers, so I'm going to talk about the Detroit Lions, the 24-6 victory. And we have to say before the Detroit Lions are not going to always blow out teams by 50 so points. And this game, I felt like they couldn't figure it out at one point. I felt like it was a really good game, and the Colts defense is better than a lot of people really realize. They got a good O line as well. Anthony Richardson made some good plays. Yeah, we have Terry and Arnold. We have some of our guys on the back end is out with injuries and they didn't play. But he threw some really good deep balls. Like I was saying, he's a good deep ball thrower. But I feel like Josh Downs and some of the players on the team let him down. Michael Pittman definitely didn't let him down. He was catching and he was torching, the Detroit secondary. At the end of the day, Detroit made them settle for two field goals, and Detroit scored 24 points. What I look at is Jared Goff didn't even really get any touchdowns. It was touchdowns from David Montgomery, and it was two from Jameer Gibbs, and they played really well. I like the fact that they find ways to win. If the one thing's not working, they go to, plan B and they execute really well. I know for sure I'm getting nervous because I feel like Ben Johnson and even Aaron Glenn possibly might not be there next year. I'd be surprised. I know at least one of them are going to leave the Detroit Lions organization on how well the defense has been playing and definitely how the offense has been executing. And the 24-6 job, basically, I have to say they scored when they needed to and when it was necessary. But congratulations to Aaron Glenn because for the last three games in the second half, they basically held teams to 0 points. So it's been 53-0 basically as far as the point differential, and I appreciate that to see Detroit Lions is finally starting to stride in that right direction. We've been getting all the praises in the world and saying we're close as good as the best show on turf type of offense, but now the defense is getting the credit they finally deserve. The Buccaneers and the Giants game was a game that I wasn't really too impressed with. I felt like the Buccaneers was going to do what they needed to do. I thought it was funny Baker Mayfield scoring and then doing the, Tommy DeVito celebration. He had 294 yards, but then I look at how well the offense did on the run game. You know, Bucky Irvin really looked good. And I just feel like that team in general just outmatched the Giants. And the Giants already have their issues right now. And then it's been a lot of turmoil and things have been going on with that team, like Malik Neighbors speaking out and not happy and saying, we don't have Daniel Jones anymore. So you can't blame him, you look at it, and now Tommy DeVito is the quarterback. He said it's not just the quarterback. We have more issues that we need to address. And it feels really uncomfortable to hear that right now because this guy's a rookie and he feels like the same Odell Beckham situation where he was trying to get the heck out of Dodge as soon as possible. And he still got that rookie contract he got to honor. So I'm believing something's going to happen with the coach and with Brian Daboll pretty soon, but I'll definitely get into that. I want to go into the Kansas City and the Panthers game. This is a team that we've not really give credit where credit is due. We've always been dogging out the Panthers and giving them a very hard time. But Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs definitely have their struggles as well, and they have their flaws. We know they have a lot of injuries, and the next man step up and they execute and they persevere. 269 yards through the air with three touchdowns from Patrick Mahomes. Bryce Young didn't really look that bad neither. And I've been seeing a lot of talking heads saying that it's not really his fault, really, after all, with the Carolina Panthers. You can start to see that now because he's finally starting to show flashes. They have a whole lot of issues, and you just can't blame it on one person. And I hope that with Dave Canales and their coaching staff that they could continue to push forward with Bryce Young and he execute and do as well as he did just recently. He had 263 yards in the score, but Chuba Hubbard has been really the workhorse as of late. He had 58 yards and a touchdown. And David Moore, he was okay as well in this game. I guess you could say he had 81 yards off 6 receptions in the score. So they're really starting to find people who can click and connect with Bryce Young. And hopefully we can see more of that from this young man. They still have a few games to go. So he have a chance to redeem himself because we know they'll be in the top as far as the NFL draft in 2025. So hopefully they could get more weapons and get things around him versus getting one of those top tier quarterbacks, which this year you might want to just sit back and try to get somebody in free agency because outside of Cam Ward, and a couple other guys, I can't even say like Carson Beck, I do like some of the quarterbacks that's coming out, but not all of them. Because I know if Jalen Milroe comes out from Alabama, he's still not really as good as I thought that he would be. He's actually worse. He went back some. And Jackson Dart, there's some guys that's going to be out there, but not many in the top of that draft. So, yeah, you might want to stick with him and try to get somebody else, like one of the veteran players, to back him up. But, yeah, this is going to be one of them troublesome years in this draft. So I wouldn't go after somebody in this draft unless you could get the top two guys. But at the end of the day, that final score was 30-27. And if it wasn't for Patrick Mahomes and his legs, that game could have really got interesting. It really got interesting when it was 25-27 and they scored that 2 point conversion. So, yeah, Kansas City still find ways to win. It's starting to get alarming because that O line is starting to be questionable, and they need some of those guys a healthy back. But until then, they're 10-1. So, hey, the heart of the champion is still beating them. The Patriots and the Dolphins don't really want to get off into that game. I feel like Tua had a great game, but then, look who he was playing. He had 317 yards, 4 scores. Drake May is in a rookie year struggle with that bad O line. 223 yards through the air, a touchdown and an interception. But under all this, he's still playing at a high level. I feel like they need to put weapons around him and give him better wide receivers because they're garbage. I feel like there would be fourth options on other teams, honestly. So they really got to get that together. They had all that money and didn't really do anything with it. I think that right now what they're doing is trying to reboot and get everything ready for next season. But yeah, they'll be definitely in the top of that draft. They'll possibly have a good pick too in that top five that they'll be at. So hopefully they can do good with that and do better on drafting. That score was 34-15, and it never was close. I want to get into the game too, that Titans, and I want to talk about the Texans briefly. The whole situation when he did to Dan Orlovsky, when he, went back in the back of the end zone and, had the safety. What I'm talking about is CJ Stroud. I know D'Amico Ryans wasn't too happy about that, but his stat line was 247 yards through the air, 2 scores, and 2 interceptions. Will Levis had 278 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, and he had a pick on the day too. But at the end of the day, the end result was 32-27. And in that Dallas Cowboy game that I was telling you too, I looked at that game and felt like that 34-26 victory was more or less, Washington, just making very crucial and bad mistakes when they needed to execute. The 275 yards, the 2 touchdowns was good when it came to Jaden Daniels, but the 2 interceptions was costly. When you have Cooper Rush, a guy who was 4-0 last year, who stunk last week, and who come back and have 247 yards and 2 touchdowns, I had to give him credit where credit is due. The Vikings and the Bears game was really interesting because Sam Darnold played pretty decent, 330 yards and 2 scores. Caleb Wilson played really good, and he started to stride at the right time. He had 340 yards through the air and 2 touchdowns. I feel like just poor execution and time management is the reason why they couldn't win because in overtime they got the ball first but just couldn't execute. And that gave the Minnesota Vikings a chance to win 30-27. The Raiders and the Broncos. I looked at that game and I said it was actually not too bad at first. They was going toe to toe, but it was too much Bo Nix with his two scores against Gardner Minshew, and he made some crucial mistakes at the end of the game. And that final score was 29-19. I give credit where credit is due with Sean Payton. He ended up getting his quarterback who he wanted, and the final result was now they're 2 games above 500, and the final score was 29-19. And hopefully we could see more from Bo Nix. 49ers and San Francisco, that one wasn't really a bad game at first, but San Francisco got way too many injuries, and Brock Purdy is not playing, so I expected that, but not as bad as they lost. It was 38-10. And I was really shocked because I thought that that game had been a little better than what it was. It wasn't even close. And I know most times you can catch Jordan Love slipping and he'll make some mistakes trying to play hero ball and do too much, but he played within himself. He had 163 yards and 2 scores, but the difference maker in this game was Josh Jacobs. He had 106 yards and he had 3 touchdowns, and that was enough to blow out San Francisco. I mean, they had a guy who was the backup, Brandon Allen, who I wasn't even familiar with in the first place. He had 199 yards to score and an interception, but the way that game ended, I definitely felt like it was going to end that way regardless. 38-10, didn't expect that big of a blowout, but I kind of figured the San Fran wasn't going to pull out that victory. The Seahawks in Arizona, that final score was 16-6. I didn't feel like it was much going on in that game. Geno Smith did good with 254 yards and a touchdown. He had a pick on the day, but Leonard Williams was the main person. He was everywhere in that game. He had sacks. He was going everywhere on the field, and it was just hard for them to deal with him. And they made the Arizona Cardinals settle for 6 points. That was the final score, 16-6. And I feel like that defense is playing lights out for Seattle, and they might find their way into the playoffs. They're 6-5, and they're looking pretty sharp right now, especially in that bad division they're in. They possibly can still take that division. So that's going to be interesting and something to look for. The Eagles played on Sunday night and they played the LA Rams. I thought this was going to be a good game, and it actually was. Jalen Hurts had 179 yards and he had a score. Matthew Stafford had 243 yards and 2 scores. And Kyron Williams had a touchdown on the day as well. Puka Nakua looked good with 117 yards. And A.J. Brown had 109 yards in the score. But the player of the game was Saquon Barkley. And now people are saying he's starting to become a front runner of the MVP race. He had 255 yards and 2 scores. He had 47 yards through the air, too. And he basically had 300 scrimmage yards in that game, and he looked good in that game. When they won the game, he had 2 really big runs that took over that game, and that final score was 37-20. That's the team who's on a hot streak. They were 2-2, and then they just took off after that. They won 8 straight, and they're definitely still in contentions on being the NFC or leading the NFC and getting a bye week. So it's a good race between them and my Detroit Lions. I want to see how far it go. It's going to be some really good stiff competition at the end, but Philadelphia is definitely knocking on the door, and I want to see what that race go to. The game yesterday, the Harbaugh Bowl, wasn't that bad. I feel like it was actually good until like at the end when it wasn't, and you start to see the dominance of the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson had 177 yards and 2 scores, but Derrick Henry had 24 carries for 140 yards. The ground and pound game got real, and I feel like they're 5-0, and they play at a high level when they let Derrick Henry run the ball and determine the game. When you try to put too much on Lamar Jackson and have him run and try to throw the ball too much, that's when they start to lose games they don't necessarily supposed to lose to. Like the 2 games where they lost against teams who are under 500 and the last in their division. Those are games that you don't supposed to lose. But when they definitely put the ball in Derrick Henry's hand and let Derrick Henry run the ball, they're 5-0. So that speaks volumes. And I feel like in that game, the 30-23 victory basically put that all in its perspective. I want to talk about some of the games that's going to come up too in week 13 and give my predictions. I wanted to brush up on college, but like I said, it's not really too much going on. But if you want to hear it, I can do that right quick and just do like a lightning round. Memphis, Tulane, I got Tulane. Oregon State versus Boise State. It's going to be a closer game than people think, but I'm going to go with Boise State, and hopefully they can punch their way to the playoffs as well deserved. Oklahoma State and Colorado is going to be a blowout. I got Colorado by the 16 and a half points because they have a point to prove after losing the last week to Kansas. Mississippi State, Ole Miss. I'm gonna go at Ole Miss, and I'm gonna take the 26 points. Georgia and Georgia Tech. It's gonna be probably a little closer than what people think, but at the beginning, I'm gonna take the 19 and a half points and say Georgia win because they're not going to slip up anymore after the two losses this year. Michigan, Ohio State. I hate this game because I'm from Michigan, but I definitely will take Ohio State in the 21 points. Tennessee Vanderbilt, I'm going to go with Tennessee and I'll take the 10 and a half. Number 18, South Carolina versus number 17, Clemson. I'm going to take South Carolina in the upset. UTSA versus Army. I'll give it to Army and I will take the points to 7. Army was a big disappointment, after losing to Notre Dame, getting embarrassed by Notre Dame. Illinois versus Northwestern, I'm going to go with Illinois and I'll take the 7.5 points. Maryland, Penn State, I'll go Penn State and I'll take the 24.5. Notre Dame to USC is going to be closer than what people think. I'll take the 7.5 points and I'll go with Notre Dame. Auburn, Alabama, this is a tricky one. I'm actually going with the upset. I've been so upset with Alabama this year that I don't think that they'll pull this off even at home. I know that they play great at home and played really bad on the road. You know what? I'm not going to do that to my family. I'm going to take Alabama and I'm going to take the 11.5 points. Don't let me down like you did last week. And I'm starting to get used to that now. Jalen Milroe. Miami, number 8, Miami versus Syracuse. I'm going to go with Miami and with the 11 points. SMU, California, SMU, 13.5. I will take that. Arizona State versus Arizona. I'll go with Arizona in the 9.5. Arkansas, Mizzou. I'll go with Arkansas. Upset. Purdue and Indiana. I'm going to go Indiana. Washington, Oregon. I'm going to go with Oregon, and I'm going to take the points, 19.5. Texas versus Texas A&M. I'm going to go with the points with Texas. 6 is going to be a close one. Kansas State and Iowa State. I'm going to go with Iowa State with the 3 points. Nevada and UNLV. I'm going to go with UNLV with the 17.5. And Houston, BYU. I'm going to go with BYU with the 13.5. And don't let me down. NFL scores. Week 13 predictions. I'm going to go with the Lions and I'm going to take the 10 points. I'm going to go with Dallas and I'm going to take the 4.5 points. I'm going to go with the Dolphins with this one on the upset. And I will take them with the 3.5 versus Green Bay. I'm going to go with the Chiefs and I'm going to go under the 12.5. I'm going to go with the Colts and I'm going to go with the 2.5 against the Patriots. Steelers, Bengals. I'm going to go with Bengals with the 3 points. Chargers and the Falcons, I'm going to go with the Chargers with the 1.5 points. Seahawks and the Jets, I'm going to go with the Seahawks and the 2.5. Texas and the Jaguars, I'm going to go with the Houston Texans and I'm going to go with the 5 points. Cardinals and the Vikings, I'm going to go with the Vikings with the 3.5. I'm going to go with the Washington Commanders over Titans with the 5.5. The Bucks and Panthers, I'm going to go with the Bucks with the 6 points. Rams and Saints, I'm going to go with the Rams with the 2.5. Eagles and Ravens, I'm going to go with Baltimore on this one. And the 49ers, Bills, I'm going to go with the Bills in the 7 points. Browns and Broncos, I'm going to go with the Broncos and I'll take those 5 points as well, easily. I want to get into some of the stats too that I was telling you about in the NFL. Actually, I want to start off with the Browns. The Browns are the first team in the NFL history to commit 3 turnovers, have 8+ penalties, convert no more than 1/3 down, and have under 25 minutes in total possession. blow a 12 plus point fourth quarter lead, and yet still win the game. The Steelers need one more win this season to lock in their 21st consecutive season with the 500 or better record. That will tie them with the Dallas Cowboys in 1965 through 1985 for the longest such streak in NFL history. Saquon Barkley of the Eagles is the first NFL player to have 500 plus scrimmage yards over a two-game span since Walter Payton, November 1977. Congratulations. And this is the reason why he's starting to get some of them front runner votes as an MVP. The NFL's only tandem running backs, teammates to each rush for 10 plus touchdowns through the first 11 games of a season is the Detroit Lion running back David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs in 2024. Packers running backs Paul Horner and Jim Taylor in 1960. Over the last two seasons, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs have combined 2,252 rushing yards after contact, the most by any NFL running back duo. They're also the only duo to each force 90 plus missed tackles in that span. The New York Giants released Daniel Jones in favor of Tommy DeVito, and I know you guys are familiar with that, and made Drew Lock the backup quarterback. Daniel Jones asked for his release after being demoted to the scout team as a safety. Malik Neighbors' frustration after the Buccaneers and Giants game, basically it just went worldwide and it went viral. New York, since winning the last Super Bowl in 2011, basically saying we have a new quarterback, went into the same results. They had 0 division titles, 10 losing seasons in their last 13 years. New York Giants record in the last 13 years span is 70, 127, and 1. Fourth worst in the NFL right now. New York Giants basically only have better records than these three teams: Jacksonville Jaguars, Cleveland Browns, and the New York Jets in that 13-year span. They had 2 playoff appearances and 1 playoff win. 6 different head coaches, one of them being interim, and 3 different general managers. New York Giants recorded 7 straight losses at home, 13 losses by 20 points after calling out the Giants coach Brian Daboll after their loss. Is it time to finally clean house now and start over, get a new coach, release Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, their general manager? I think that it's close to that time, and it's about that time. You need to go ahead and clean house. I think right now, even if you keep Joe Schoen, you need to get rid of Brian Daboll. He was one of them coaches on my hot seat, and I think that seat's only getting hotter because when the players start to leak out, because I know Malik Neighbors, when they asked, man, well, how about them trying to give you the ball finally in the fourth quarter? He said, man, how am I going to really execute or do anything when we down 30-0 at that time? And he said, man, well, hey, I wasn't in the game plan, so it's not on me, ask my head coach. In 2024, NFC North is the second division since the 1970 merger to have at least 3 teams with 8 plus wins through 11 games. 2024 NFC North, 10-1, my Detroit Lions. 9-2 Minnesota, 8-3 Green Bay. The others was in 1997 NFC Central before it became the North. 1997 NFC Central through 11 games, Minnesota was 8-3, Green Bay was 8-3 as well, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was 8-3. We were 5-6 at that time, and Chicago was 1-10. That's all I have for today, but I would like to say thank you all for chiming in, and I appreciate y'all spending time, listening to me and doing my podcast. I have the ways that you can contact and get with me, but I'll basically make that up for you later. I have a lot of things I'm trying to do right now, and I would like to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I hope y'all have a great Thanksgiving weekend. I want this time to be dedicated to family, friends, and loved ones. And besides that, I just like to say, hope I see you guys next week, and peace until the next episode. God bless.